All right, this is what it has come down to. It is Casey and John is on the fringe. So hopefully, John, if you're listening to me right now, you can also Instagram yourself through the whole thing and try to follow along as we attempt to do this for the very first time. So if you haven't done it already, we're doing chocolate snack cake. We're going to preheat our oven, which is behind me. I'm going to do it too. We're going to go bake, and it's 350. So it's a good idea to go ahead and just preheat your oven now, because while we're doing all of this, which shouldn't take very long, the preheating on your oven should have your oven to the right temperature by the time we actually put the cake in. So the other question that I know that people are messaging me about is pan size. So you can use, honestly, you can use any size pan that you have. The whole point of this is that you should be able to take everything that you've got at home and utilize that for baking. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to try to get any equipment. Casey and I both have 8-inch pans, which mine is a square pan like this. But if you have a loaf pan at home, if you want to make cupcakes instead, you can do that. If you have something that's big, so for example, let's say you don't want to make an 8-inch cake and you want to make like a 4-inch cake because you only want half the size, because maybe it's just you in our quarantine life and you don't want to eat that much cake. I don't know why you would do that, by the way. I would just eat all the cake. But if you've got some aluminum foil, this is a really easy way to kind of make the pan any size you want. So I'm going to just show you really quick what you can do with an 8-inch pan. This is also a way to go ahead and utilize your pan prior to, and I'll show you how to prepare your pan for baking. But if you want to make it a smaller size, real quick, I would just take, my doorbell is ringing and I don't know why. This is the craziness of Instagram Live. I have no idea why my doorbell's ringing. So we're getting that. I don't know who would be visiting me because we're supposed to be in lockdown. So whoever that is, if you are out there, I'm sorry I didn't answer the door. So this is the aluminum foil. I'm going to go over my pan so it goes completely over my pan. So if you've got a pan at home right now that you're using, you can use this as preparing for your pan. You can use aluminum foil. A lot of people, I like using parchment paper because it's nonstick. Or you could just butter your pan, which is perfectly acceptable if you have neither. But if you have a pan that you think is too big and you want to make it smaller, I'll show you that real quick. You would just take this foil that you're seeing right now. Now stuff it in your pan. So at this point, if you are using this to bake for today and you want to use an 8-inch, this is fine. What you would do is you would just slather this in cooking spray. So I've got, in the mess that is around me, I've got some canola spray, and what you would do is you would just spray the entire thing, cooking spray, okay? So now that pan is prepared for the batter. If you don't want to go that route and you wanted to make it smaller, see how this foil is all the way up? You can fold it. I'm going to fold it. And reposition it in the pan. And now I have made like a little loaf size for my pan. That's a half size.
So that was it last night?
Yeah, that's what I was doing last night. Thank you, Casey. And I will show you what that looks like. But you basically, all you need is a wall in your pan to make it whatever size you want. So if you have a larger pan at home, like let's say you're working with a 9-inch pan, a 9x13, things like that, you can make it smaller by using the foil, and all you do is, like, I'm going to show you the size, is you make a little barrier with the foil, and all you're doing is you're just folding the foil. So I'm taking it, and I'm just folding it in. So it looks like its own little fake pan, but you're putting it inside the pan. If you don't want to do that, the other option is, I've got some parchment paper that I already cut out to size. This is just like regular standard. The parchment paper I'm using, I got from Costco the last time my mom was here. Thanks, Mom, for going to Costco before the craziness. She got me some parchment paper. I've cut out a parchment paper to size. I just usually take a stick of butter. And Casey's done this already. I take a stick of butter, and I go ahead and I actually butter the bottom of my pan. Pay no attention to the sad state of my pan right now. I made the mistake of using a knife in my pan, and it's nonstick, and that was a mistake like many years ago, and I paid.
Oh no.
So here is the piece of paper. We're going to flatten that down into the pan. So now it sticks at the bottom. A lot of people don't do that, but I like doing it because when you're pouring in batter or anything in your pan, it tends to move around. So for now, I've buttered the bottom of my parchment paper, or if you don't have parchment paper, just I like taking a stick of butter and like opening just a little bit of it and using the outside. And then what you do is you just basically go all the way around the pan, go underneath, you can put on the bottom of the pan, but basically all over. And if you think you're doing it too much, you're not. The more you do it, the better, because most of the time, even if your pan is nonstick, things will stick to the pan, and you'll do what happened to my pan the first time I used it, where I had to use a knife to get whatever it was inside out. So, which is so we are buttering our pan together, guys. Or like I said, if you have cooking spray, use the foil. If you have parchment paper, use parchment paper, whatever you would like to do to make it work. So some people, when they're making cakes, they don't just butter it, they also flour it. You can do that. Because this is a chocolate cake, if you're going to flour it, I would use cocoa powder and not flour, because the chocolate cake will show the white of the flour. Or you can do what I'm about to show you right now, which is very controversial and scandalous. I am actually going to take some sugar, just regular sugar. So I've got this giant vat of Domino sugar. Shout out to New York, Domino sugar, that I'm going to take out. And I am going to take my little handy cup. I've just put regular sugar in this cup. And I'm going to, instead of flouring it, I'm going to put sugar on the outside. So I just dumped a whole bunch of sugar in the pan. I just went like that. And what you do is you just shake your pan. And because you buttered it, the sugar should stick. If you're doing it right. If you're not doing it right, like I'm at the moment, I didn't butter enough inside. It should stick. And then it will end up doing things. If you don't want to use sugar, which is fair, you can use cocoa powder. I would not recommend flour. Use cocoa powder. What happens is, you can hear the little bit of sugar sticking. I don't know if you can see. Now you can see how my pan has sugar on the outside of it, right? And what's going to happen is when your cake rises, the sugar is going to form a little caramelized barrier on the outside. So you can have a little bit more of a crunch, which is why I like using sugar versus using cocoa powder or flour. Or if you don't want to use either of those, that's okay. You don't have to do any of this. You could just butter your pan. What did you do, Casey? Did you decide to butter your pan?
I did just butter. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Straight butter.
Here we go. Now we're going to get into it. So you preheated up your oven. You prepared your baking pan. Now we're going to get into the actual cake. So let me move all this stuff aside. Get a bowl, just a regular bowl. If you don't have a bowl, you can use a saucepan. You can use whatever container you've got. All you need is a container to put some batter in before we move it into the pan. So I'm just going to use a standard regular mixing bowl. And we're going to do our dry ingredients first. All right, so prepare your, everyone should have hopefully at home, you've got your dry ingredient measuring cups. Most people, so this is a liquid measuring cup. That's what you're using for like the oil, the vinegar, the milk, whatever you're going to use for it later. This is for dry ingredients. Sometimes people don't have both. You can probably get away with like doing your liquid ingredients. That's a controversial statement that I'm going to get like crapped on. Or you can use this and put liquid ingredients in it if you're in a bind. I would say always use this for liquids because it'll be more accurate. But because we're home cooking and you can do whatever the heck you want, we are going to go ahead and I'm going to use this for dry ingredients and I'm going to use this for wet ingredients. So let us get our flour. So I think I mentioned to everyone that you can use any kind of flour you've got on hand. You can use cake flour, all-purpose flour, whole wheat flour, whatever you've got. I like using, personally, I like using King Arthur flour. Hence the reason why this cake was adapted from King Arthur flour. Because I just like the way it tastes. You can use any kind of flour. I'm actually going to use a Southern flour today. It's called White Lily. And the reason why I'm using it is because before all this went down, I thought it would be great to make biscuits. And I was told that if you use Southern flour, your biscuits will taste better. Whether or not that's true, I don't know.
Sounds true. I believe it.
Do you believe that? I think it's true. I think it's true. I mean, why did the Southern biscuits taste better in the South? I mean, it doesn't taste better when you like, you know. So I've got this container, this vat of container of flour. This is regular all-purpose flour, but like I said, you can use cake flour. You can use, whole wheat flour, whatever you've got on hand. We're going to take our dry measuring cup, and we're going to have 1.5 cups of flour. All right, everybody? So let's go and measure that together. Some people like using a spoon, and I'm going to actually do that to get an accurate measurement. Some people scoop into the flour container. You can do both. That's a controversial statement, too, because I think most pastry chefs would probably get mad at me for saying that you should dig right in. But you can do both, but you need to level it. So I'm going to take a spoon. I'm in my flour container, and I'm just going to go ahead and spoon some flour into my measuring cup. We're going to go, this is a 1 cup measuring cup. And then what you want to do is when you get to the top, see how it's a little bit over? You need to level it off, take a spoon, and go ahead and just level it off so it's completely accurate. More accurate if you have a scale, but we're not going to get into that today because we are baking with what we got, guys. So here we go. So this is 1 cup. That's 1. And you need another 1/2 cup. So you do the same thing. And in this method, just to show you a different way that you can do it, I'm going to take my spoon out. I'm going to take my flour. And this is the way that you feel like you should do it because it makes more sense to you, and that's fine. You can just go ahead and dig. I just dug that in and do the same thing and level it off. The things that would happen is I think most pastry chefs would tell you might not have as an accurate amount of flour, and you'll have more flour, but we're living in a quarantine life, guys. Do what you want. So I say, here we go, another 1/2 flour. So now we've got 1.5 cups of flour in your bowl. Okay. Any questions so far? Hopefully not. There's only one thing that's going on, and if there are questions from this distance I can't read it, it's going to be terrible. So hopefully, Casey, you see questions, maybe you can answer them because I cannot. So we've got 1.5 cups of flour. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our sugar. So here's my giant vat of sugar. Get your sugar out. Hopefully you have been using your measuring cups or whatever contraption you've got at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take... The reason why I said 3/4 cups to a cup of sugar is usually in baking recipes, it's a 2-to-1 situation. It's usually 2 cups of flour to 1 cup of sugar. They do that a lot in like pound cakes or any other kind of cake recipe that you'll usually see. I tend to not like my cakes that sweet, and I put less sugar in the recipe, and it, for me, has not done anything terrible. The cake will still rise, it still looks great. I've only cut about 1/4 cup of sugar because I don't like putting that much sugar in my cake because I'm about to douse it in frosting. So you choose your battles, right? You're going to have the sugar in your frosting, and you have it in your cake, or you can have it in both. Nobody is hurting if you don't have it in both. It tastes equally delicious either way. So it's just up to you. Like if you feel like you want to kind of be good because you're in, quarantine life and you don't want to get your quarantine 15, 3/4 cup. Go for it. If
3/4?
Yeah, 3/4 cup. If you don't care, then I say go for a cup because it'll only make it better. So I'm going to measure out, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm taking like a little measuring spoon situation, leveling off the sugar just like you did with the flour, taking 1/2 cup here, so that's 1/2 cup, and I'm taking my 1/4 cup measuring cup, and I'm going to do another 1/4 cup, and see here, leveling off. So now we've got, I'm going to use a 3/4 cup because I just mentioned I like it less sweet, but if you want to, you can add up to another 1/4 cup, or you can add another tablespoon, whatever floats your boat. All right. So we've got our sugar in the bowl. So right now you've got flour, 1.5 cups. You've got 3/4 cup of sugar, and we're about to grab our cocoa powder. So any standard cocoa powder will work here. A lot of the time in like grocery stores, you see like the Hershey's cocoa powder. There's like Ghirardelli. There's all sorts of different kinds. We're using, yes, exactly. You can use, if it's the special dark kind, that's equally delicious. Any of that will work. Do not use Dutch processed cocoa powder right now, because if you do, you have to add in more like baking powder and baking sodas and things like that, just because of that alkaline issue when you're baking, because baking is scientific and I am not a scientist. And out there to my friend Mary, who could probably explain this better than I, and I know she's watching right now, there's a reason why you can't use it when you're making certain things, and other times you have to use it. Today we're using standard cocoa powder. So I put my cocoa powder in this container because I use a lot of it, because let's face it, guys, I bake way too much. I am going to get my 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, all right? Do the same thing. I'm going to dig. in this case, I'm digging because I feel like if you have more cocoa powder, will it really hurt any? No, I don't think so. And I'm going to go ahead and level off. Take another drop. So now I'm at a quarter cup. Oops, cocoa powder. Make sure make sure you have enough, Casey. Quarter of a cup. And I hope John's doing okay out there, John. I hope you're doing okay out there. Quarter of a cup. So I'm dumping that in.
Smells good.
It does. That cocoa powder smells really good. If you try to case it now, that cocoa powder would be really bitter, which is why the sugar is going to help us. So right now, in your pan, recap, 1.5 cups flour. You have 3/4 to 1 cup sugar, and you have a 1/4 cup cocoa powder. Yes?
Yeah.
All right. So we are now going to use our measuring spoons, and I have like a mishmash going on here. Hopefully you're using whatever you have at home. If you don't have measuring spoons and you just have like regular spoons, I say in this day and age, just use those. You could probably get away with it. I don't think it will affect the taste too much. Pastry chefs around the world are hating it now. So I am getting a 1/2 teaspoon out of my little measuring spoon kit here. And I'm just going to get regular table sea salt. You can use iodized salt. That's the Morton's that you see. You can use any kind of salt. Maybe you have some weird fancy salts at home, like honey salt, things like that. That's fine. I'm just going to use plain old Trader Joe's sea salt with my measuring spoon. And we're going to just dig our spoon right in. And doing the same thing, you kind of want to level off. I do it by eyesight, but some people want to be really precise, and you can do the same thing we were doing with the flour and take a spoon and kind of level off. But if not, it's 1/2 teaspoon salt. If it's a little bit more than 1/2 teaspoon, you're okay. Just don't pour the whole bottle in, all right? So 1/2 teaspoon we go. All right. Next, we are going to take a teaspoon of baking soda, which I have the regular standard Arm & Hammer kind. I think you can have whatever kind, it doesn't matter. 365, Trader Joe's, regular grocery store. All you need though is you need a teaspoon. So I'm actually gonna, because I like doing less dishes, I'm gonna take my 1/2 teaspoon that I use in my salt, and I'm gonna make a teaspoon of that, leveling that off so it's completely level on my spoon. 1, we're gonna make 2 here. 2. All right, cool. So now you've got your teaspoon of baking soda. That is all your dry ingredients. All right. Now the great thing about this recipe is because it was a depression. It's called a depression cake because the recipe started around the depression because people didn't have access. Yes.
We have a question. Can I use Himalayan sea salt?
Oh yeah, go for that. That's fancy.
Good question, Rach.
If you have Himalayan sea salt or pink sea salt, you guys are fancy, and I say run with it. If it's the kind that you have to kind of mill, that's going to take you a second. So I'll ramble on for a little bit. You can go ahead and mill that, and then it will create the salt for you from the rocks. But it's Depression era cake. Hoping that answers the question. Depression era cake meant that during ration period here in the United States, you didn't have access to a lot of things like milk and eggs. So one of the things that this cake does is that if you've not noticed it, this has no eggs in it, no butter, things that you probably couldn't get during the rationing period. And what's going to make everything happen in this cake, as far as what you get with when you usually use eggs is what helps your cake rise, is you're going to use a mixture, and this is where the scientific part gets in, and my friend Mary, who is a scientist, will probably hate me again. She's on this, and she's going to be like, you're telling it wrong, but here you go. When you mix baking soda and vinegar, guys, and I don't know if you ever did that experiment when you were in, elementary school, it will cause like a little bubble of an eruption, and that is what's going to make your cake rise. So that's why we're about to use vinegar in our fabulous liquid. So hopefully Himalayan salt person, you've got your Himalayan salt sorted. If not, everybody, so your bowl should look like a mishmash of stuff. I would take a spoon or take a whisk if you've got it. And this is my whisk. Here's my whisk. And we're just going to mix it. Mix, mix, mix.
Julianne, John asked what a measuring spoon was.
Oh, jeez. John. I'm sad that we're not seeing John as well bake this, because he definitely was going to be the example of perhaps like if you don't bake a lot. And measuring spoons, John, usually come in a set. and they have like little markings that tell you, like mine have been used so much that my markings have gone off, but they'll say like a quarter teaspoon, you know, a whole tablespoon or whatnot. If you don't have that at home, you can get away with using, and it's going to throw it off just a little bit, you can get away with using like your regular spoon. My only caveat is, this is called a tablespoon, but if you look at the tablespoon measuring, see how much deeper this is than this? That's going to be problematic a little bit. It won't be terrible, but if that's what you've got at home right now, I say work it and just go ahead and use your regular tablespoon. So this is a tablespoon. If you have a teaspoon at home, that's a little smaller. I'll get that out. If you have a teaspoon at home. This is slightly more accurate a little, but again, see how the well is a little bit deeper in a teaspoon? But you can use this and kind of eyeball it and try to use that. And again, pastry chefs all over the world hating me right now, but you can use what you've got. So, and if that's what you've got, that's what you've got. And I swear to you, it will probably still taste delicious because we just put a whole bunch of sugar and a whole bunch of cocoa powder in this, and it's going to be chocolatey and crazy. So there we go. So you've mixed up all your dry ingredients. I took my whisk and I've just whisked it together. You don't have to be crazy about it. A stir or two is fine. You don't have to do anything really crazy. Now we've got our dry ingredients in a bowl. We're going to set that aside momentarily. Now, I like taking either another bowl. So Casey's got another bowl at home that she's going to use. And I have got a liquid measuring cup. I like using liquid measuring cups for this whole purpose of the fact that for liquid measurements, it's a little bit more accurate. But like I said, you can also use dry measuring cups if you don't have a liquid measuring cup. So for this, I like actually, and this is going to be controversial, I like starting with the oil because we're going to have to measure the oil as far as like the markings are concerned. And usually in recipes, if you've ever not noticed it, that when they have recipes down, typically the list of ingredients are in the order of how you put the things into your bowl. But in this case, I'm going to not do that. So again, I'm doing things that maybe you shouldn't be doing, but we're going to do it this way because it's better for me to measure. If you don't at home have a liquid measuring cup, you can take your dry measuring cup and we're going to do 1/3 of oil. It can be any neutral oil you have, vegetable oil, canola oil. If you want to be fancy, olive oil, which I'm about to do. I'm going to use olive oil. Delicious. Or you can use applesauce. Casey's going to use applesauce as a substitute, which is actually healthier, and it's going to make her cake, and I hate this word, more moist. I didn't want to say that word moist, but I had to because it doesn't come off the tongue right, guys. And that was a really not good thing to say either. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use olive oil because I'm going to be a little bit bougie about it. But like I said, you can use vegetable oil, canola oil, safflower oil, coconut oil, any oil that you got on hand, you can use. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to go ahead and measure out 1/3 of a cup in my liquid measuring cup, or like I said, if you have a dry measuring cup. So put it down when you're measuring and eyeball it to see that it hits 1/3. Double checking. Okay. Everyone, hopefully you've got 1/3. Mine's not going as fast as I want. There we go. Now I'm at 1/3. So you've got 1/3 cup oil. We're going to move on. Now, I'm going to take my vinegar. I've got a regular white vinegar, but Casey, what are you using?
I have a red wine vinegar. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. You can use apple cider vinegar. Casey was mentioning rice vinegar earlier. Any vinegar will work. We're going to do a tablespoon of vinegar. Okay. All right, so I'm going to get my handy dandy measuring spoon. I'm going to do a whole tablespoon. And I'm going to just drop that right into the liquid cup. Okay, right into the oil. Okay. Next, I'm going to grab my vanilla. You can use artificial vanilla flavoring. You can use regular, this is vanilla extract. I've got a really fancy vanilla bean paste that I like busting out every now and then.
What if it
Vanilla,
expired?
What do you have?
What if it's expired?
Smell it really fun. Yes, there's alcohol in it, and this is where, one of these days, I think the next time we do this, maybe I should get Mary to help out, because the science person in her is probably going to tell me wrong. How expired is it, Casey?
2018.
That's not too, okay, you know what? I'm going to say there's alcohol in it. Let's go with it. You're working with what you got. You're fine. Let's do it. I'm going to use a vanilla bean paste because I'm going to be fancy, but you can also use vanilla. I say 1 to 1.5 teaspoons. If you like your cake to be a little bit more vanilla-y, error on more. If not, 1 teaspoon, perfectly fine. So I'm actually going to do just a teaspoon. So I'm going to get my teaspoon out. I'm going to use vanilla bean paste. And all vanilla bean paste is a vanilla bean that they've scraped and basically added it into vanilla extract. So I'm getting the vanilla bean and the extract, and that's what makes it fancy. But aside from that, it's literally the same thing that everyone else is using. So here's my teaspoon. I'm dumping it into the oil. Okay. So what you've got in your liquid cup right now, or your bowl, you have at least a teaspoon of vanilla, a tablespoon of vinegar, a 1/3 cup oil. We are now going to go ahead and do, and this is where you can get crazy. You need to do a cup of liquid, okay? And this is where it doesn't matter what you're using. You can use water, you can use milk, you can use buttermilk, you can use yogurt, you can use coffee. I'm going to use coffee. That's cold. Don't use hot coffee in this situation. A cup of cold coffee that I brewed earlier that has just been sitting and now is room temp. Ah, nice. Cold brews too can work.
Does it work?
I'm going to use that because coffee is going to enhance the chocolate flavor. Another option that you could do is in the dry ingredients. If you had espresso powder on hand, you could have added a teaspoon of espresso powder. Usually, this is a fancy baking one. That's espresso powder, or you might have espresso powder at home. Not espresso coffee. That's not instant, because the granules in that is going to not actually melt. So you have the coffee granules.
Wendy's question: does it have to be cold?
Room temp. Don't be hot. It should not be hot. If it's hot, Wendy, right now, get some ice cubes and stick some ice cubes in your mug. Cool it down a little bit, because when it mixes in, you're going to mix it in, and it's going to kind of like, if it's hot, it's going to ruin the kind of science that we're doing here. So I'm going to use, and if that doesn't work, Wendy, just use water. Water is fine. Room temp water. And I'm going to show you guys, I'm not going to use my liquid measuring cup. I'm going to use, scandalously, I'm going to use my dry measuring cup, and I'm going to put a cup. I had coffee that I had before. That's about room temperature. And I'm going to pour it into my measuring cup. It's kind of soothing, the sound of liquid going into a cup.
It does sound nice, like rain.
Right? If you don't have liquid like that, if you don't want to use water, again, if you've got yogurt, you can stick some yogurt in there. You can use sour cream. You can use milk, half and half, cream, whatever. Floats your boat. Or like I said, water, which everyone should hopefully have in this.
John asked if bottled water works.
Yeah, you're just being fancy, John. Just don't use sparkling water, okay? Still water. All right, so now in this liquid measuring cup, you should have vanilla, vinegar, oil, and whatever liquid you've used, right? Take your handy dandy whisk or your spoon, whichever you've been using right now. Mix up your wet ingredients.
Your moist ingredients.
All right, give it a little stir. It doesn't have to be fancy. All right, so now we are going to mix the ingredients together. Here we go. Aside from that, hopefully nobody else has any questions and everyone's following along. So I'm going to grab my dry ingredients, okay? So this is my bowl of dry ingredients. I've got my liquid. They're separate, okay? The easiest thing to do that I find for situations like this is I'm going to grab a spatula. You can have a spoon, or you can use a spoon. Actually, let's use a spoon. I won't be fancy. I'll use a spoon. Okay. Make a well in your dry ingredients. So when I say well, make a space so that you can have liquids. I just put it in the center, okay? I'm just making space in the center. And And I'm pushing the flour to the corners, so that way there's like a little well. And I'm doing this because when we mix it in, it'll incorporate better because we can add the flour slowly versus just dumping everything in. However, if today is the day you want to dump everything in, you can do that too. You don't have to be fancy like me and build a well. You could literally dump liquid ingredients into your dry ingredients. But because I'm being a little fancy, I have made a little bit of a well. I don't know if you can see that. And actually when I tilted the bowl, everything fell back. So
hard
now
work.
I make a well again. All right, so I've made a well. Take your liquid ingredients, and I promise you, if you mess this up, it's not going to be bad. Take your liquid ingredients, put it all in the bowl. Dump it in the bowl. Okay? All right, so now you have a pool of liquid and dry ingredients, and it's a mess. Take your, if you have a whisk, use a whisk, take your spatula, your spoon, whatever, and we're going to mix it together, okay? If you've made a well, you can slowly incorporate the flour in just by pushing the flour into the liquid, or you can just mix it. And I think Casey's just mixing, which is fine. It's fine. You're not going to ruin it. Just keep mixing it. Okay? Now, we're just going to mix it until we don't see any flour left. Once you see no flour, you are done mixing. Stop mixing. So it might take a couple times, and you might have to move the flour around a little bit, but you're mixing it together. Should look kind of a little lumpy. Then that means you need, mine was a little bit lumpy, and I looked and underneath there was more flour. So I'm mixing some more. Just until you don't see any more lumps. You don't have to be perfect about it because we don't want to overmix our batter. So mine's just still a little bit lumpy, that's okay. As you can see, a little bit clumpy, that's fine. If you want to be hardcore about it and that like you're, I don't know, you really don't like lumps, mix it a little bit more. Oops. But you can't mess this up, I promise you. So you've mixed it. Your batter's looking really wet. It should look pretty wet. It's not going to be like sticky. Your batter's wet, Casey?
It's very moist.
Okay. Oh, how we hate that word, but have to use it a lot, right? So this is the part where we're going to just pour. So you've got your bowl of batter. Pretty wet. Mine's pretty wet. It should not be thick. It's pretty wet. It's like splitting off, right? We're going to grab our container that we had before that you've pre-done, right? So here's my 8-inch pan. I used parchment paper. Casey, I think, splattered her pan. You might have used aluminum foil. We are going to take our batter. And this is the point where I would actually use a spatula if you have it. If you don't, use a spoon. It's fine. Just pour your batter. Pour it into the pan. And just scrape out the bowl so that there is no more. Oh, I just found some flour. Woo! Did not mix up. Now I'm putting it in. Stick it in. 2. Relaxing, isn't it? Kind of scraping it all out.
It is.
Okay. So I think it's pretty good. I still have a little bit left. This is the part where, I mean, to be fair, there's no raw eggs in this. If you wanted to like taste it, you could. I'm not going to because now I'm going to be paranoid and want to wash my hands. So, but you could lick the bowl if you wanted. So there's that. All right. My pan's about halfway full, depending on the depth of your pan. It might be a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. But now you've got this batter in your pan. Sometimes I like knocking my pan against my counter like this. I'm just dropping it on my counter. Because
what does that do?
It lets the air, sets it and it like drops the air out. So now it's level, right? We're going to take this, we're sticking it in our oven. We're going to put it in our oven anywhere from 25 to 35 minutes. I like checking it around the 25-minute mark. The recipe says about 30 to 35 minutes because everyone's ovens are different. Some ovens like go higher, some like don't go like, as high. So I usually check it a little bit beforehand because nobody wants a dry cake. I don't want to use the word that's opposite of dry right now, so I'm not going to. But we're going to take this batter. Let's go to our ovens. Let's stick it in the oven. It's going to go for at least 25 minutes. I'm going to set the timer so we can check it in 25 minutes.
Does it matter what rack it's on?
It should be the middle rack if you're using it. The cake is not going to rise that high, So don't worry about if you've got a top rack, but the middle rack is the best one to use. So now we have made a proper mess, basically. I like taking the bowl that I use and just dumping all the things that I don't need back into the bowl so I can wash it all. During this time, while we're waiting for the cake to bake, hopefully everyone's at that stage where you can go ahead and put your cake in the oven. I'm going to show you some different ways we can make frosting. So for this cake, which is pretty simple. So let us get, for this, you're going to need another bowl, hopefully a clean bowl.
Right.
If you don't and you need a second to clean another bowl, take that time to do it now. You're
How
also
big is the bowl?
going to need some chocolate chips. This is for one of the first options of frosting. I'm going to give you 2 today. Actually, I'll give you 3. I'll give you 3 today. You can do 3 different things with this cake. Once it comes out of the oven and it's warm, you can dust it with powdered sugar and serve it. Dust it right before you put it on a plate, and that's fine. And it'll just be cake with powdered sugar, and it's delicious. If you don't want to do that, you can make what we're going to do, and we're going to make kind of like a quick ganache, which is basically a whole bunch of chocolate mixed with a liquid that's going to make it creamy. And when it dries a little, it's going to get a little bit thick. And it's delicious on regular cake. You usually frost that when it's cool. In this situation, because of the way that we're doing Instagram Live, when the cake comes out of the oven, we can also take the ganache and drizzle it over on top, and it's like a chocolate sauce. And then it's kind of like you have a molten chocolate cake, and it's delicious. So you can eat cake warm. You can wait until frost it later. That's fine. And then I'm also going to show you how to make a buttercream. If you are like disgusted by all the ideas of chocolate right now and you want something different for the cake, I'll also show you how to make a buttercream. Which, if you want to do that, your temperature for your butter needs to be room temp. So if you have not taken out your butter, and I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning of this video, as a different option, your butter needs to come right out of the fridge right now and stick it on your counter and make sure it gets to room temp. Maybe stick it kind of close to your oven because it'll be a little bit warmer there, but get it to room temp. Because nobody wants buttercream frosting that is clumpy. So, but the easiest thing to do, like I said, first thing, powdered sugar just on the top. And we'll talk about that momentarily, but I'm going to show you how to make the ganache frosting. So, questions on chocolate chips. It doesn't matter what kind. You've got semi-sweet, you've got bittersweet, you've got, ooh, good deli, good call, Casey. Milk chocolate, dark chocolate, bittersweet chocolate, it doesn't really matter. Mini chips, I don't care. You can have white chocolate chips. You want to use white chocolate chips. You can have butterscotch, peanut butter, you get the gist. Basically any kind of chip that you've got. If you don't have chocolate chips, or you don't think you have enough chocolate chips, do you have chocolate in your fridge? If you do, this is the perfect time if you don't want to eat the chocolate, by its normal self, which I don't know why you would want to do that, but hey, maybe you just need some chocolate for this experiment right now, you can do that. There's also baking bars, if you've got those. This one's a Ghirardelli as well. This is a 60% bittersweet chocolate. I love bittersweet chocolate because, like I said, I'm not a big, I am a sweet person, but I'm not too sweet of a person. I like that kind of soury bitterness in sweets. So you can use a bittersweet chocolate. Casey is using, I believe that's a milk chocolate.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use this special dark chocolate from Hershey's because I saw it in the store not too long ago, and I thought it would be delicious. John is using unicorn chocolate chips that he found, I think, in the store, which I'm really sad that we can't see him on camera use because I would be so intrigued to find out what was going to happen to your unicorn chips when they melt. Because it's going to be a whole bunch of different colors, which would be actually quite cool. So like I said, if you don't have chocolate chips and you want to use regular chocolate, this is a bittersweet. You can use regular milk chocolate, dark chocolate bars, Hershey's chocolate, whatever you've got on hand, we're going to melt it anyway. So we are going to take this. I'm going to open my bag of chocolate chips with the
How many of these?
I'm going to grab a microwave-safe bowl. You can do this 2 ways. If you want to be fancy about it, you can use a double boiler, but what we're doing today is trying to make it as simple as possible. So if you've got a microwave at home, there's some people, Casey, that I know don't have microwaves because they don't believe in it, which is fine. You can use a double boiler, and you can just go ahead and warm up. I'm going to show you how to warm up the liquid on the stove as well. But really, if you have a microwave, use your microwave. So I'm going to take another bowl. Microwave safe, nice plastic. I'm going to measure out in your dry measuring cup. Hopefully you've got a clean one. I've got kind of dusted with flour a little bit. That's okay. You can wipe it down if you'd like. For posterity's sake, I'm not. Mine's a little bit floury. So take your chocolate chips, measure out. You're going 1.5 cups, okay? If you don't have chocolate chips and you're using bars of chocolate like this, I would chop this up in small pieces.
John's having issues.
Oh no! Did he not preheat his oven? What did he do?
He said you can add him in. He said he thinks he's having carbon monoxide poisoning because he's never used his oven before.
Oh, jeez Louise. You know what? It'll air it out. Open a window. You'll be fine. So I have a 1/2 cup measuring cup, so I'm going to do 3. It's almost like a whole bag of chocolate chips. I'm like tempted to actually use my entire bag of chocolate chips. I'm going to be honest with you. Because after 1.5, I've probably got like this much left of chocolate chips. Which, to be fair, if we want to decorate later, you can use the rest of the chocolate chips and sprinkle them on top. So if you've got extras. Or you can be a fiend and just dump your entire bag of chocolate chips. I am not. I'm going to save them. So you got it in your bowl, right? Now, we're going to use a 1/2 cup of liquid. It can be any liquid that you've got. The recipe says you can use 1/2. You can use water again. You can use coffee. You can use cream. You can use milk. You can use any liquid you'd like, okay? It just has to be hot. That's the problem. Now, this is the point where, Wendy, I'm sorry I told you to cool down your coffee because you could use your coffee in the frosting, and I'm sorry that I made you do that because it has to be hot. So take now this is going to be the crazy move around, all sorts of stuff in Julianne's kitchen space. The small Brooklyn kitchen. You feel me? I hope so. It's like we don't have any space, but we're going to make it work. I'm going to access my microwave from this distance. All right, I still have my liquid measuring cup. If you do not, that's okay. Or if you have any other container, a mug, whatever, to warm up your liquid, you want 1/2 cup. I'm going to use, scandalously, I'm going to use my dry measuring cup. And I'm going to use some 1/2 that I've got sitting in my fridge. You can use, again, any cold liquid. If you don't want to use any dairy, almond milk is fine. You can use coconut milk. You just need to warm it up. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the microwave. Once I put it into a microwavable container, that would be smart. Don't microwave in metal. That would be a bad thing. Do not follow my lead, all right? On that point right there, do not microwave in metal. So I'm going to get a little container. That's a microwave. The first thing that I see here is a Glade container. That's fine. If you don't have a microwave, I would just go ahead and warm up your liquid on the stovetop till it starts boiling, okay? And then just take it off the stove. So I'm suspicious about my milk. Smells okay. We always have to do the check, right? Check your milk to make sure they're okay. So I'm putting this 1/2 cup. I think I'm using all of it. I think I'm going to use all of it. Almost all of it. And just take it. What was that?
Question is if I poured the chips right into the pot. I did. Is that bad?
No, that's not bad, actually. That's not bad. Because once the milk starts to boil, it'll melt the chocolate chips. You can do that. You can actually do this. So you've got, let's actually just do this together. We'll go ahead and theorize this together. I'll use my chocolate chips. Here's my liquid. Here's my chocolate chips. I'm just going to dump the liquid in the chocolate chips, and I'm about to put this in the microwave, okay? Because it will do the same thing. You can do 2 things. You can warm up the liquid first and stick it in the dry chocolate chips, or you can do both. I would not put the chocolate chips in the microwave by themselves. Do not do that. Because you'll start mixing it, and it'll, like, heat up. You've got to put some liquid in. So I've just taken all my 1/2 that I've just used, and which made my cake now. My cake is now not vegan. Because I just used 1/2. Should have used something else, but now it's not vegan. But it's okay because I'm eating it. It's fine. Chocolate chips, I'm putting it in the microwave. All right. We're going to start 30 seconds. I like doing less because you can keep on adding, but you can't take it back. So what I just said to you guys, when you are using liquid into the chocolate chips and it's dry, when you take it out, it's going to start burning. which is not good. Don't burn your chocolate because there's nothing that's making it melt, right? So you just have like this like really dry kind of like gross sort of chocolate. We're gonna go 30-second intervals and we're gonna check what the chocolate chips in the milk look like. So
Ooh.
I use half and half. My milk and my chocolate chips still pretty solid. So I'm gonna put it in now another 30 seconds. We're gonna keep going like that. And then I would prepare probably like a spoon or if you still have your spatula, that's fine. You can use that. I'm going to use a spoon because my spatula is covered in cake batter, although that might be delicious. Make your frosting taste like a little bit like cake batter. We're doing 30-second intervals here. And if you're on the stove top, keep mixing. Keep mixing, all right? So keep mixing your chocolate chips and your...
When do I stop?
It doesn't look melted, Casey?
Yeah.
Okay. You're good.
Okay.
All right, so mine, so now my chocolate chips are kind of melty. It's kind of gloopy. I'm going to mix, all right? And I'm going to stick it back in because it's still a little bit thick.
Should I leave it in here or put it in the bowl?
Leave it in there. Less things to wash. Leave it in there. Just take it off of the heat and put it aside. And as it cools down, it'll get thicker. And that's what the kind of consistency you want with the frosting when we put it on a cold cake. I'm still, stovetop apparently was the way to go. Casey's done, and I'm still waiting on my microwave. I don't know how anybody else is doing that. Everybody else is like, wait. Casey is not burning, John. Yours should not be burning. Add liquid if it's burning. All right, mine is still really wet.
Moist.
But my chocolate is melted, so I'm gonna mix. I feel like I should have done the stovetop method, but we're doing the microwave, and there's no take backs. So see how mine, and I'll show everyone so that way you don't feel alone. Mine is still really gloopy. You see that? There's still a lot of liquid left, and my chocolate is in like clumps. So I'm just mixing it. Just keep mixing it. And then as I mix it, I don't know if you're going to see this, as I'm mixing it, I'm going to end up pouring it on the floor. As I'm mixing it, this chocolate's starting to appear. It's a little bit thicker now. So just keep going. This is where if you're on the stovetop, you could do this as the liquid is boiling. So Casey is done. Julianne's still mixing. All right. I have ganache! Yay! Okay. So now.
Ron said to wait.
Right.
He said, how do you get it thick?
It's going to thicken as it cools. So it should be kind of runny still. I'm going to show you the consistency of mine, and then Casey can show hers, the one that she did on the stovetop. So I stuck mine in the microwave, right, guys? And I mixed it now so the chocolate is completely incorporated in, okay? It's still kind of runny, which is right, okay? All you want to make sure is you should not see any liquid in here. It should basically be all chocolatey now, okay? If you feel like, and I'm going to put this as a caveat, if you feel like it's still too runny for you, you can add more chocolate chips. And we just do this whole thing over, like 30 seconds in the microwave, keep on mixing it. However, I'm going to tell you this right now. It's runny right now, but as it starts to cool down, you can start seeing it now because mine's clumping now. It's going to start clumping up like this because once the ganache cools, it'll be frosting ready. So trust, this is where you're going to trust your gut, right? Do you want to add more chocolate? Do you want to add more milk? If you're having the opposite problem, if you have too much and it's thick, add more liquid. All right, so those are your two options. If it's really thick, add a little bit more liquid. I would probably do like a tablespoon at a time. And if it's really thin and you're afraid of it, then I would add a little bit more chocolate. Probably in the same increments, maybe like, a handful at a time. But look how mine was runny earlier, and I just let it, this is just a few minutes with me gabbing to you on the phone. And it's like thickening as we speak. All right. Now, I failed to mention, I just realized that when you stuck the cake in the oven, you should have set a timer for 25. Did you set a timer, Casey?
I did.
Okay, good. We're going to use your timer, Casey, for all of us because Julianne failed. That is like the first rule of baking. You got to set a timer. So how many minutes do we have left, Casey?
10 minutes.
Okay, so in 10 minutes, we're going to check our cake. Everyone, hopefully your frosting, your ganache is working out for you. And like I said, mine is thickening. so it's not as droopy anymore. That's great. We're going to set it aside. That is going to be your option for frosting. And again, when it comes out of the oven, you can literally stick your frosting on it and it'll be like runny like chocolate syrup and like a warm cake, or you can wait a while and you can frost your cake when it's cool. So because we are going to be on like live for hours to wait for the frosting cake, which to be fair, it's not like I have anywhere to go, guys. So I can sit here and chat with you for a few hours if you like. I am not going to wait for the cake to cool to show you what you can do for the frosting. I will, however, wait a little bit for the ganache to cool because I think putting that on too hot will be a mess. But in the kind of like kitchen magic of sorts, I made a fake cake, not our cake, fake cake yesterday that I can show you what happens. My cake is cooled overnight. You don't have to wait that long. It literally is just when it's cool to the touch. Usually takes like an hour or two to cool it down, to frost it. Now, you can also be very greedy and gluttonous, like I am a lot of the time, and just eat it warm straight from the oven, which is also delicious. But if you don't want to do either of those options and you don't like chocolate, the other option was powdered sugar that you can sprinkle on top. I usually just use a sieve. I think I'm pronouncing that wrong. Sieve? Sieve? Someone who knows French, correct me. Sieve? Sieve? Mine is really rather large because I also use it to sift my flour. And note to all those people that usually bake, we did not sift our flour because this is a simple cake. But this is normally I use this to sift flour. But you can use this and like just pour some powdered sugar on top and just kind of sift it over your cake. That's one way. I'm also going to show you how to make vanilla buttercream if you would like to make vanilla buttercream as a frosting. Some people don't like a lot of buttercream for their cakes, but that's what they usually put on cupcakes. If you're like, you go to the store and you buy a cupcake, it's usually a buttercream. Buttercreams, I think, sometimes tend to be sweet, so I'm going to show you the way that I make my buttercream, which is to make it less sweet. So we're going to try that real quick. Let's see how to do that. I don't believe Casey's prepared to make buttercream because I didn't ask her to, so she can kind of feel the questioning, Casey, as I try to make this buttercream. I actually only just posted the buttercream information yesterday. So this is kind of like real-time me just showing you an alternative. You didn't have to prepare for buttercream at all. But if it's something that you like, you know, maybe you already thought about it ahead of time and you wanted to use butter and make a buttercream, then that's what you want to do. But this was the moment where I said maybe when we started at the beginning, I should have asked you to take butter out of the fridge. Because if your butter is really hard, making buttercream is going to be like a disaster. And you can make buttercream by hand if your butter is pretty soft. I totally do not, and I use a mixer. You don't have to have a KitchenAid. I sometimes use my KitchenAid when I'm really lazy, but I'm going to show you how to make it with a hand mixer, which is I think what everyone usually has at home. But I'll also show you how to make it if you're just using your hand. So I'm going to grab some butter, which I'm hoping, I sat it out into my counter like for an hour because we were trying to attempt to test our stream to no avail. We failed. As I think we advertised that we were trying to do like live streaming with people 1 and 2 and 3, and you only just see Casey because we were testing it and it did not work. But I went ahead while we were waiting for like testing our live streaming on Facebook that did not work.
Salted or unsalted butter?
What was that?
Salted or unsalted butter?
Ooh. This is a good question, guys, actually. All right, I'm going to be controversial. Most recipes call for unsalted only because they want you to add the salt to taste. So a lot of people, maybe you don't like salty things. You can. They don't tell you you can use salted butter in recipes. The only problem becomes is if there's extra salt in the recipe, you might make it too salty. So what I would do is if you have salted butter at home and that's what you want to use, take the salted butter, but don't add any extra salt, or just add salt a little and then taste it as you go. Hope that made sense. But if that's what you've got at home, I got to tell you this, I've used salted butter and salt on top of salted butter. Delicious. But that's also because I like, you know, I kind of like, I'm very like, I like sweet things, but I like it a little salty. So I like sprinkling salt everywhere. But I'm going to use butter that is room temp. Casey is going to feel. We've been going on for too long, guys. It didn't allow me. Well, now Casey has to come back on. because it stopped my live streaming because we were on for way too long. So you have to re-add yourself to my stream. Instagram was like, you can't be talking for that long. And the other thing is, yes, you can. You can be talking for that long. We lost you. We lost everyone. Is everyone back? I don't know. So apparently there's a cutoff time for Instagram Live. They're like, we don't want you talking for more than 25 minutes. So we're breaking this, guys. We're gonna go ahead and do frosting as a separate opportunity here. And we totally cut off with me talking about butter. So for those of us who are just joining us now, you've completely missed Casey and I baking a cake, which is totally okay, because now we are talking about frosting, which is a whole other topic. So I have a stick of unsalted butter, or salted butter, I'll take it back. And I am going to, like I said, if you have a KitchenAid at home, you can dump the entire stick without doing anything to it into your KitchenAid because the mixer is so powerful that it'll mix it for you. Some people don't have that. Totally okay. You have a hand mixer or you have just a regular. You want to do by hand, fine. But if you're going to do that, if you don't have a KitchenAid or a stand mixer, what I would do is I'm just taking a regular butter knife and I'm going to cut pieces of it should be soft butter. I'm just going to start dumping it. You can tablespoon pieces, smaller than that, whatever floats your boat. I'm just cutting it random. That piece is rather large, actually. But just a whole, And then while this is happening, Casey, remind me to check on the cake when the timer goes off.
1 minute.
Okay. So I'm doing all this. All right. This worked. Let me get my powdered sugar.
John asked, when should this be getting thick?
Are you still on that? This is a problem, John. It should be getting pretty thick. If it's not, add more chocolate chips. Have you used the entire bag of chocolate chips?
He said it's purple soup.
Oh, that's what happened with the unicorn. It should be, like I told Casey and everyone else earlier, it's going to be really liquidy. Take it off the heat and just mix it. If it's completely mixed together, it's fine because, for example, so my ganache we made a few minutes ago was really watery and soupy, but it was completely mixed in. And now my consistency is a lot thicker. See how it's just dripping off my spoon like that? That's pretty good now for sitting at room temp. And it's going to get even thicker the longer it sits. In the beginning, though, it was just glooping off my spoon, but now it's a little bit thicker. Casey, how's your ganache? Is your ganache a little thick?
Let me show you. Ow, it's hot.
Oh, yours is pretty great. Oh, yours is good. See, I think maybe the stovetop method might have been the way to go, but microwave, we're still waiting a little bit. All right. So, John, if yours is still a little bit liquidy, take it off the stove. If you've added more chocolate chips, take it off the stove and just let it sit for a second. And then in about 5 minutes, we'll check it again. And if it's still really watery, we'll try to figure out what to do. All right. So I've got, for those of you making buttercream at home because you just can't stand the thought of ganache, buttercream. And actually, if you're making buttercream and you've also made a ganache, may I suggest something? A layer cake effect. So when we take that cake out, I'll show you how to layer it. And you can use the ganache as a filling between, and then use the buttercream as a frosting on the outside to make it even more crazy. All right. So, I've got regular confectioner sugar here, Domino. Shout out New York. We are going to use, back I think on the West Coast, everyone has CNH. Here on the East Coast, we have Domino. I don't know what do they have in the South? What do they have in the South, Casey, for sugars? Domino here on the East Coast. What do they have on the South? Is it also Domino?
I forget.
Regular brands? So I haven't opened this at all. So I'm going to take my scissors and open the bag.
Julianne, the timer went off.
Uh-oh. All right. This is the pause we have, guys. If everyone should hopefully have a toothpick at home. If you don't have a toothpick, you've got like a metal skewer or anything like that.
I have a knife.
You have a knife? That works. Anything that will poke. You can even have a fork, although be careful. I'm going to use a toothpick.
Take it out?
Toothpick, yeah. Grab your cake. Let's check it. Use your oven mitt if you got it. Let me take mine out.
Ooh, it looks so good.
It looks pretty good already. Mine looks pretty good. I'm going to show everybody. Mine looks pretty good. So I'm taking my toothpick. I'm going to stick my toothpick in, and I'm going to pull it right back out. If it looks a little wet, it needs to go back into the oven, maybe another 5 minutes. Mine is completely dry, which means it's cooked. So 25 minutes was perfect in my oven. Does not need to go back into my oven. I'm going to poke it in 3 different places. I poked it in the middle. I'm going to poke it probably on the side and lift up. Completely clean. My toothpick is completely clean. I'm going to go on this side. It's completely clean. And I'm going to just do it on the tops. You don't want to put it back in your oven if it's clean like that because you're just going to dry out your cake. So my cake is cooked at 25 minutes. How about yours, Casey?
Mine's done.
Yours is done. Okay, perfect. So 25 minutes it was. So I'm going to turn off my oven, and I'm going to put my cake and just stick it on my stove top to cool.
Okay. My mom says it smells great.
It does smell really good. The great thing about baking, it's like its own like a room deodorizer, right? Your whole house will smell like whatever you're making. So, guys, your cake is cooling, or maybe you put it back in the oven. And like I said, if you put it back in the oven, I would only do it in 5-minute increments and check it every 5 minutes because you don't want to overbake your cake. If you are using different size pans, it's going to affect the timing of your cake. So I think one of the questions was, I use a loaf pan or something. Your loaf pan is much smaller than my pan, so that means it's going to take longer to bake.
The question
John's
is,
Lego Man pan.
what's the name of this cake?
It's just called a chocolate snack cake, or a lot of people refer to it as a chocolate depression cake.
They're calling it Tom.
I'll take that. Call it Tom. Why not? Why not? Call it Tom cake. So if your cake is warm and you're the type of person that likes warm cake out of the oven, at this point, you can totally stop watching Casey and I and cut into your cake and enjoy it and have a lovely, like, brunchy breakfast without any topping on it whatsoever. If you wanted to, you could take that same cake and, like I said, sift some powdered sugar. So I'm using the powdered confectioner sugar, and stick that on top, and you're done. And that's it. And thank you for making cake with us today. If you're not, and you're still like wanting to ganache your cake, let's check on our ganache. Mine's still thickening up. Casey's was pretty good already. You can also take this ganache at this point. If you want to eat warm cake, cut off a slice of your warm cake, take it out of the pan, cut off a slice, and then just drizzle ganache on top.
Ooh.
You can do that too. And then it's like having chocolate lava cake, right? Just like drizzle it on top. Because while it's still warm, and it will make this a little bit more chocolatey than you would if not. That'd be a really extreme chocolate cake. And actually, maybe that's what we need right now in this time.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so you can do that. Casey, you can try that now if you'd like. If not, what I would do is I would wait for your cake to cool down, and then I'll show you in a second when the ganache cools down a little bit more how we can frost the cake. Otherwise, we can make buttercream, which I'm doing right now. You have your stick of butter that you've cut up. I've got my powdered sugar. I am going to make, I like doing anywhere, so most recipes will tell you anywhere from 1 to 4 cups of sugar, which is a lot of sugar, okay? And I like sweet things. So I don't usually put the maximum amount of sugar. The reason why you would is because if you like really thick frosting, like say you go to, I'm not going to name drop any bakeries in New York, but there are certain ones that have really thick frosting. Probably because they put a lot of sugar in their frosting, and that's what makes you kind of have like a sugar rush to the head. I like mine a little bit less sweet, so mine will be a little bit thinner, but you can do whatever you'd like. And like I said, we're in lockdown. If you want lots of sugar, go for it. So
you've earned it.
I start with a cup. So I'm going to do, I only have, my only clean thing right now is my quarter cup measuring cup. So I'm actually going to dig into this bag and level it out. Same thing like we did with the flour, level out. We're going to start with the cup. I'm starting with the cup, okay? Now, if you have a handheld mixer, this is where you bust it out. If you don't have a handheld mixer and you need to do this by hand, it's going to take a long time. And by the time you're done with it, maybe your cake will be cool enough to frost. So right now I have butter, I have powdered sugar in one bowl. I'm going to get my liquid. So I was using half and half earlier. You can use almond milk. You can use cream. Because this is a vanilla buttercream, do not use coffee. Because that might be what you have extra of. Don't use the coffee. You can use water too, but to give it a little bit more of a creamy consistency, I'm going to bust out my half and half. And I'm only checking it out here. Oh, it's still out here. It's still out here, my half and half. My little Food Town half and half. I'm going to put a tablespoon.
Half and half.
Half and half. I'm just going to do a tablespoon. I'm going to do, let's be crazy. I'm going to do 2 tablespoons, guys. 2 tablespoons. I don't like putting a lot of liquid in the beginning because when you do, it's a little runnier. And like I said, I don't like adding lots of sugar. So I like trying to keep mine as thick as possible. So I put the milk, I put the butter, I put the powdered sugar. If it's a vanilla buttercream, you would like some vanilla extract. So I'm going to take it. I would put a teaspoon of vanilla. Here's my teaspoon. Here's my vanilla. Dumping it in the bowl with everything else. This is the part where, if you're hand mixing this, you know, more power to you guys. That's a lot of workout today for your arms. Because I will tell you, mixing it by hand, I would get like a wooden spoon and go at it, you know. But I'm going to be lazy out of the 2 of us today. If you're doing by a wooden spoon, this is the point where you're going to mix it. I would try to crush it down. Actually, if you're doing that a little bit, I would crush it down a little bit more. If you have a fork or a knife, crush down your butter a little bit more. So when you incorporate it in, it will mix better. If not, and you're like me and you're lazy, we are going to take my mixer.
John said he forgot to take the cake out. He said,
take the cake out.
What can I use if I don't have a toothpick? And does black mean burnt?
No, because your cake is chocolate. Take your cake out, grab a fork like Casey did, stick the fork in the cake, and lift out the fork, and if there's no crumbs on the cake, your cake is done. If your cake is still liquid, if there's still like liquid batter, put it in the oven for another 5 minutes. I would test it in 3 different places, minimum. Oh dear, I can't wait to see what your cake looks like, John. I'm like really excited about what your cake is going to look like. Well, Casey and I are slaving away over here. Next time, we're going to get you on the feed correctly. So I've got this mixer. I'm going to mix this buttercream. Everything's in there. It's going to be very messy. I should have worn that apron. But I wanted to show everybody my Muse t-shirt that the Warner Music Group made. So, right. So my frosting actually with just 1 cup of sugar is pretty thick. I'm mixing. I'll show you my mixing. Mixing. All right. So mine is pretty thick, as you can see. Mine I can go like this, and nothing comes out of my bowl. I don't know how long I could do that for before it'll actually not come out. But mine's pretty thick. I'm going to do what probably you shouldn't do if you were trying to make food for other people, but I'm making it for me. I'm just going to test it with my finger, which is probably bad. It's pretty good, actually. It still tastes a little buttery to me, and I don't like it tasting that buttery, so I'm going to add a little bit more sugar. So I'm going to start, like I told everyone, you can do it in like, after the first initial cup, I do it in 1/4 cup increments. So I'm going to add an extra 1/4 cup right now, just to make it a little bit sweeter and not like buttery. And I'm going to add another, I think I'm going to add another tablespoon of half and half. Because it's
John said, he said his whole cake is still liquid.
It's still liquid, put it back. Put it back. His pan is probably really large. You probably need at least check it every 5 minutes. Put a timer on and check it every 5 minutes. All right, I'm mixing. All right, I'm using the same finger. That's kind of sanitary, but not really. Oh, it's pretty good, actually. It's pretty thick, too, already. See?
It looks good.
It looks good. That's it. That's buttercream. That's all. I like, because, you shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. Because what I just did is there was a lot of mixture on my mixing tool here, and so I just sprayed it onto my onto my bowl. I put it back in my bowl and I turned it on to like get it all out, and pretty much did it. probably shouldn't do that because it splatters the kitchen and you probably make a mess. And if you have kids, that's probably what they're going to do. But if you can clean it up, it's fine. And I'm going to eat this. Delicious, guys! We're making buttercream. Okay.
I'll be right there.
All right. So now you've got buttercream to frost your cake with when it's cool. Because it's the magic of Instagram Live, I am going to show you what it looks like when you frost a cool cake. Because everyone's cake right now is either still in the oven or you've taken it out and it's still hot. I'm assuming it's still hot. This is the point where if it's still hot, like I said, you can drizzle your ganache over it, drizzle some powdered sugar on top, and you're done. That's like your breakfast cake for the day. If you're the type that wants to like have this cake for like after dinner maybe and make it like a special weekend cake and you want to decorate and you want to frost it, I'm going to show you real quick what you can do. Moving all these things around. And I'm actually surprised. I have 2 cats, and the fact that they haven't climbed onto this table the whole time is shocking. So, all right. So, for the magic of TV or Instagram Live, yesterday I did what I was telling you earlier with my pan, and I made little wells, and I made 2 different types of cake in an 8-inch pan. You've got your standard chocolate cake that we made today, or that we're making today. That's the chocolate cake. And then this one is a vanilla cake that I put chocolate chips in.
Ooh.
I gave a little bit of a recipe tutorial for that on my Instagram page of the substitutions you need to make a vanilla cake. But it's basically the same thing. You don't need eggs. You don't need butter. It's all oil. It's vinegar. It's the same amount of stuff. You just don't put cocoa powder in it. And it's basically vanilla cake. So vanilla cake, chocolate chips, and I've got this chocolate cake with just the one that we made today. So I'll show you what it's going to look like if we use the chocolate cake. Okay? So, and I'll use the vanilla on the chocolate chip one. So we'll see that.
Smart.
All right. The bad thing is I'm gonna have to show this to you and like angle it because of the way that my camera is right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and let's get like a serving plate. Would that be fun? I'm gonna get a serving plate.
Okay.
How's your cake, Casey?
Smells good.
Okay, I'm getting a serving plate.
Okay.
All right, I'm just getting a regular plate. It's not even a serving plate, but it's a square plate that I randomly got at IKEA like a million years ago, and I still have. So this is my IKEA plate. So for those of you, if you wanted to know, if you use aluminum foil and you use this cooking spray, if your cake will come off, the answer is yes. It comes right off. It's like you use a nonstick pan. So I didn't use anything but foil and cooking spray last night when I did this, and this is your cake. So it just comes right off. I'm going to stick it on the plate. Because I made the well, my cake is not completely even. It actually kind of has a little bit of a crevice in it that I'll show everybody because it's kind of funny, and we're going to fix it with frosting and no one will know. So I'll show you how you can fix it. So see how, see how this bit is not quite level and square because of the fact that my pan was a little bit wonky because I made those wells. It's not quite a bar, and I have a lot of chocolate on my fingers right now. It's not quite a bar. So that's okay. We can fix this. So if your cake comes out of the oven and it didn't quite look like it's supposed to, it's not quite square, or whatever pan you're using, it's fine because we're going to fix this with frosting and nobody will be the wiser. And if you live at home by yourself, I mean, you know, but you can take a photo of it after and no one will know. So I'm going to show you how to frost this real quick.
There's questions.
So,
Did you bake the cake in foil?
Whose cake is foil?
Does you bake the cake in foil?
I baked the cake in foil. I did. So in the beginning, when we were making cake, when Instagram cut us off the first time, it's probably going to cut us off again, but it cut us off the first time. I went ahead and I sprayed foil. I put foil into my pan and I sprayed it with canola oil, cooking spray, or you can use any cooking spray, coconut oil, cooking spray, whatever you've got. And it makes it like a non-stick pan. You can also use parchment paper on the bottom. And Casey just did the buttering method, which is you just butter the bottom of your pan, and that also makes it non-sticky. It should lift right out. So in this case, because I was testing the aluminum paper method, the aluminum foil method, because I wanted to make 2 different cakes in the same pan, I just used aluminum foil and it came straight out. That's also because I use a really crazy amount of cooking spray. But like I said, use what you've got. Like, you know, you don't have to necessarily follow the directions that you see on recipes. You can kind of make it work, as they say. As Tim Gunn used to say, make it work. So I'm going to show you, and I'm going to try to do this in the best way possible. I don't know how to do this. Everyone can look at the Warner Music Group Artist Services notebook that Casey designed.
Ooh.
That was really fancy, guys. That's a shout out. WMGAS. That's a shout out.
Should I be taking it out of the pan?
You can now. Do you have a wire rack, Casey?
I do.
Okay, yeah. If you want to take your cake out and stick it on a wire rack to cool down more, that will cool down your cake faster than sitting in the pan. You definitely don't want, if your cake is still really, really hot, you can leave it in the pan for a second. That's fine. You don't have to take it out. But if it's starting to cool, you can go ahead and lift it out of the pan. If you use foil, you should be able to just like lift with the foil that you use and lift it right out. And if not, you're going to have to use a spatula on the sides. Sometimes you can use a knife or the blunt end of a butter knife and kind of go around the edges to take it out. So those are the two things that you can do. Casey's going to mess with her cake on that side, and I'm going to show you how we're going to frost this cake in the messiness that is my countertop. So I've got the cake that I made the other night that cooled down. It's cooled down overnight. It's nice and cool to the touch. It's ready to frost. We have the ganache. I'm going to show you two different ways. We have the ganache that we made just a few minutes ago that was really, really thin. I don't know if you guys remember. It was really thin. It's been sitting out now, room temp. So I want to say like 10 or 15 minutes, Casey, right? Maybe?
Yeah.
And see how gloopy and thick it is now? It's only going to get thicker as it cools down. So it will look really like sprinkle on your cake.
Drippy.
It's really drippy. Is it still drippy? It's still okay. It just needs to cool down a little bit. Yeah. If you think it's the stove, you can take it off. You can take it out of the pan and stick it in another bowl if you want.
Should I put it outside?
No, it should still be okay. If you think it's still too thick in like 5 minutes, Casey, add more chocolate. It's hot enough, it'll probably still melt it. Okay, so I've got this cake. We're going to use the ganache. I'll show you what it looks like when you ganache it. I've got, because I bake a lot, I have frosting spatulas. You don't have to have a frosting spatula. You could have a butter knife, or you can have a regular spatula. So I have a frosting spatula. They usually look like this, or they look like this. They're flat. So if you have a butter knife, you can use a butter knife too, as long as it's flat.
What about
the only thing? Oh yeah, that's cute. Is that Santa Claus or a chef, Casey?
I think it's for cheese.
Cheese knife. That actually, that would work really well. I've got cheese knives. I've never tried. You should try the cheese knife, Casey. Let us know how that works.
Okay, I will.
All right, so usually you use this when the cake is really large, usually like with round cakes and things like that, because I kind of made like I call it a candy bar size cake. It's like a 4-inch cake, basically square. I'm not going to necessarily use this big flat one because it's too big. I'm going to use what Casey's probably using. It's a little bit smaller. That's fine. The cheese knife for cheese. But I'm using a little frosting spatula because I bake too much. I'm going to take the ganache. It's still a little bit runny. That's okay. If your cake is cool, it will be fine. Because the more it goes, the more it sits, the thicker it will be. If your cake is still hot, like Casey's is, her frosting, when she puts it on, is going to just be liquidy. So, Casey, if you heard me that, if you're going to serve it warm, though, you can totally serve it warm. It'll be fine. So I'm just going to take the frosting, and I'm just going to take a glop of it, and I'm just going to plop it on top of the cake. Just plop it on top of the cake.
Okay.
Yours, Casey, because your cake is still hot, it's going to be more like chocolatey syrupy, which is fine, because that'll be delicious. So mine is kind of running a little bit. I put, if you can see here, I just put like a couple of dollops on top. And all you're going to do is with whatever flat spoon or flat knife, is you're just going to smooth it out on the flat end across your cake. And the great thing about ganache is already really smooth, unlike buttercream frosting. And all I did was swipe, and it's already really silky, and you can see it from here. It's already silky. It's dripping down the side, which is fine. We can work with that. And all I'm doing is I'm just back and forth on top of the cake. That's all. Back and forth. And what's going to happen is the longer that the ganache sits, the thicker it will get. And, a few hours from now, this ganache will actually almost be like, regular frosting, but a little bit milkier. So if it's dripping down the sides like mine is, sometimes I just take it. You can go ahead and...
It is.
smooth it, because your cake is still hot, Casey.
It's going
if you're
through.
gonna serve it hot, then that's okay, Casey. But if not, like, I would wait a little bit.
Too late.
Yeah, wait a little bit maybe. But as you can see, and you can take as much frosting as you want. I'm going to drizzle it down the sides so you can see what I'm doing. Drizzling it down the sides. I just put a whole glob of it, and that's all I'm doing. That's what's happening on the top too. Just folding it back and forth. And that's it. So like if you have a regular cool cake, you can just do that. And what I was saying before is this is half of an 8-inch cake. It's just cut in half. You can make a layer cake out of this and kind of make like a layer bar cake with your 2 halves of cake. So Casey and I both made 8-inch cakes. But if you cut that in half, you can take one half on the bottom and stick the other on top and just put ganache in the middle, like a middle layer, and you've got a layer cake. So
Ooh.
whatever you want. Or if you want it single, like this is why we call it a snack cake. You can just take your cake and just put the ganache frosting on top just like that. And that's it. And you're done. And that was like super easy. And it's like things that you can have right now that'll make you feel good about yourself. And you can just frost the top. You can frost the sides. You can do whatever you want. It's your cake, right? So if it's still in the pan, you can be even lazier than that. And you can keep your cake in the pan once it's completely cool and frost it from there and use that pan as a serving tray and just stick the cake and then never take your cake out and just cut the cake from there. I mean, you can do whatever you want, right? So that was the ganache. So when you ganache, when it's cool and it's frosted, all you have to do is spread the ganache on top, okay? So ganache. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to have a lot of cake after this is over, guys. Like, I'm going to be a cake. I will turn into cake when this is over because I have too many options hanging out. So I went ahead and I made that vanilla cake with chocolate chips in it last night. Same method. I just used foil. I'm going to use the vanilla buttercream on this. So show you what it looks like. I'm not even going to take it out of the foil right now to frost it because I'm going to be lazy. So I'm just going to show you. This is the vanilla cake. So remember we made that crazy buttercream frosting that I only used 1.25 cups sugar, half a stick of butter, 3 tablespoons of liquid cream, whatever you want to use, and vanilla, teaspoon of vanilla. And this is my frosting, right? So I'm going to take my other spatula. And my cake is completely cold, okay? If you are using buttercream, do not put buttercream on the cake that is hot because it'll just melt. I'm doing the same thing. I put a dollop and you're just smoothing the buttercream like that. Because it's rustic. Because we're not trying to be fancy. Because it's not like, you're using this and we're making like wedding cake. And it's not.
It looks so good.
You're just frosting it like that. And the more frosting on top, and this is what happens in bakeries, the more frosting that you put on top, the easier it becomes to spread it. And then, like I said, you can just, that's it. That's it. Done. I'm going to be a little bit of a perfectionist and try to make it nicer. But this is where I'm saying if you made a mistake earlier, and like let's say your cakes are not even, you could take more frosting literally and just stick it in the corner that's not square and fool everyone and make a little square of frosting. And everyone will think it's a square and no one will know.
Yay.
There we go. Casey, how's your cake turned out?
I think it's good.
Yeah? Good. Okay. So I'm going to take my hot cake and I'll show you what that would look like if we just put powdered sugar on top. So this is me just frosting vanilla buttercream. Done. All right. So now you've got 2 options. The third option is you got your hot cake. So mine is still kind of hot. I'm going to take my oven mitt and use it at the bottom. So it's still in the pan. Still pretty warm. But it's kind of cold now. Casey, is yours a little bit cooler now?
It is. Yeah.
On top. So I'm just going to slather, I kid you not, I'm going to slather all my frosting on top of this cake. And that's all I'm going to do. The ganache that we made earlier is still thickening. See, it's still kind of gloopy. It's still thickening. I'm just going to dump that all on top of this cake. And then we're going to be done with it. Or if you wanted to be bougie about it, you can take your sieve right before serving. Take your powdered sugar, stick it in your sieve, go like this. Ooh. I just poured powdered sugar down my pants. Good thing nobody can see my pants. And I'm just, that's it. That's it. We're just powdering sugar. Powdered sugar. Powdered sugar. This is where you shouldn't take the sugar directly from the bag, and you should actually use your measuring cups, like I just am now going to do because I spilled a whole bunch. And I took my sieve, and I will show you. Ta-da! That's it. I just put powdered sugar all over my cake. And it's still hot. And you can serve it right out of this pan. And actually, let's try that. Let's taste test, guys. Let's taste test. Let me get a knife. I'm going to get my butter knife, which is probably not the best. Maybe I should get a spatula knife. I wonder if I should use my spatula knife that I use my buttercream in. Would that be weird? I don't think so. It just looks like buttercream. Yeah. So I'm taking out my buttercream on my spatula. I'm going to use my flat spatula that I just buttercreamed with. So I just put powdered sugar on top of my cake. I'm being simple. Casey's putting ganache. I'm putting powdered sugar. And it's still hot. It's in the pan. It's probably been cooling for 15 minutes. I'm now going to cut into it. This is very, very exciting. Cut my cake. See, I made a little cut. I'm going to... And remember, I just used parchment paper and buttered my pan. Now, I'm going to lift out my cake. I cut it a little bit weird, but that's my cake.
Ooh, it looks so good.
I put powdered sugar on top. I cut it a little bit weird at the bottom. Don't pay attention to that. That's the cake. And you call it snack cake because you literally could eat it like this. You don't have to have a plate. I mean, if you put ganache frosting on it, I would probably put on a plate.
I probably need a plate.
But because I just put powdered sugar on it, like I could eat it like this. And I'm going to. And I'm going to be like food courting it on TV. Hi. Oh.
Yay.
I'm really good, guys. Yay. Oh my God. I'm actually really proud of myself on this because it's still pretty warm. If you want to be gluttonous, I'm going to, like I said, you can take your ganache. I'm going to like that on top. I'm going to be crazy, and I'm going to I'm smothering some chocolate on that. I have some toasted almonds.
Ooh, that sounds good.
This is where you can go crazy. You can put sprinkles on top. I'm going to put some toasted almonds on top. You can put some chocolate chips. I just put some toasted almonds.
I think it's a fork.
Oh, are you using a fork? Ooh, that looks really good.
Oh.
I just put some toasted almonds and ganache on half of it, and the other half is sprinkles. And I'm just going to eat this cake like right like this. And it's delicious. And I'm glad you guys joined us. And I'm hoping John's cake is out of the oven by now.
It's so good.
That's really good.
I've ever had.
Oh. And it's completely vegan. I'm delicious. So
good.
Cake for breakfast, guys.
That was easy too.
All right. Hopefully everyone's cake turned out fantastic and fabulous, and hope all these tips worked out for you. And John, I hope your Lego cake is okay and your purple glue. And I definitely want to see your Instagram video about it, and I would like to see a photo, please. And everyone take a photo of your cake and let Casey and I know how it turned out. Okay. Bye, everyone. Have a happy Saturday.
Bye.